as societies were also coming together and falling apart. McLuhan coined the term global village, another example of dialectical thinking, because the globe is the largest thing, the largest possible social unit, and the village or tribe is the smallest. And he argued that the new form of social organization, this global village, is emerging out of the electronic media environment. The old media environment, dominated by typography, had seen the birth of nationalism and the emergence of the nation state as the only legitimate form of social organization. This occurred in part because print made possible coordinated systems of government, for example, by the printing of law books and bureaucratic forms, and it created homogeneous cultures through the production of literature and the establishment of universal schooling, and bound it all together through newspapers, of course. In the electronic era, we see nations coming together to form a kind of global community, first in the form of the United Nations, then in other forms like the European Union. But we also see nations breaking apart, as has been the case throughout the Soviet bloc, the Soviet Union, Czechoslovakia, Yugoslavia, these places are all gone. And in the developing world, much to our chagrin, in Iraq. But it's also happening in stable Western countries like Belgium, Spain, even Great Britain is falling apart, coming apart, Scotland becoming independent. Both from above and from below, the nation state is under assault. And not just from larger and smaller political units. We've long known of the revolutionary potential of multinational capitalism, and more recently we've learned the appalling possibilities presented by terrorist networks such as Al-Qaeda. Virtual tribalism in forms both benign and threatening is undermining social stability. I fully expect the United Nations to emerge from this turmoil, not as a champion of globalization, not at all, but as a conservative force protecting the nation state against these assaults. In the end, we may find ourselves in a world where multiple affiliations are possible and power and status is measured by the number of associations or citizenships that we can claim. I think it's no secret that the city, too, has been under attack since World War II. Death has come from the skies to London and Dresden, to Hiroshima, to New York. The airplane and the missile is to the city as firearms were to knights in armor. The concentration of populations into urban centers once served the function of mutual protection. Now it renders us vulnerable to attack. It's important to understand that the city was once one of the most important and powerful technologies human beings ever created. The city was the first supercomputer, the first medium for gathering, storing, and processing information on a scale that transcends human experience. And like the electronic computer, the city could not function without a special, artificially constructed language, a language for creating programs, for processing data. That special language was writing, the written word. But the electronic media have not been kind to the written word, and the development of the digital computer in the aftermath of World War II has rendered the city computer obsolescent. Now, this doesn't mean that the city will disappear, and personally, I have no intention of moving away from where I live in the New York metropolitan area, despite the patterns I've recognized and related to you. But the future belongs to new forms of social life, new media of communication, whether I'm a part of it or not. And so in the end, I fear that I'm not all that different from the professor giving the exam in that story, in our urban legend. I have my own habits and expectations, and I can't help but be surprised by the students like the one in that story. They represent the future as the professor represents the past. But what I can do as the professor is embrace those students and enter into a dialogue with them. I believe we can create a dialectic within ourselves between our own inner students and inner professors. And we need both. I believe we can create a new synthesis so that, like the student we can find the freedom to step outside of the system to understand our media environment as it's evolving, and that, like the professor, we can find the discipline to systematize that knowledge and to make it available to others. And then maybe we can find our way out of McLuhan's maelstrom. Thank you.
The floor is open for questions now. I hope you have lots of wonderful questions for Dr. Strate.
Yeah.